Welcome to the Woman's Current. Is the tide turning? I'm Sylvia Beckerman.
And I'm Molly Wadzeck. Together, we're exploring how women support women across generations, experiences, and perspectives.
From baby boomers to millennials and beyond, we're asking, are we lifting each other up? And how do we keep the tide moving forward? The most important lessons this year didn't come from one of our guests. It came from my grandson, Bryson, and he's 4. He said, I'm still learning. And I remember thinking, aren't we all? At 4, at 74, at 39. Welcome to the Woman's Current. This episode is a little bit different than our normal. Normally, Molly and I are joined by a guest, but today it's going to be just the two of us. As we're wrapping up season 2, we realized that there's one conversation that we haven't had, and that's not with a guest, but with each other. Over the past, I was going to say year, but it's been less than a year, we've spoken to authors and activists and journalists and educators and doctors, leaders, mothers, daughters, and women whose lives have taken unexpected turns. And somewhere along the way, we've both of us have kept learning about ourselves, about each other, and what connects women across generations, while maybe doing a little editing, not changing who we are, but refining how we see ourselves in the world around us. So today we're turning the microphones around, and it's going to be towards us. It's not a recap. It's a conversation about what has surprised us, what's challenged us throughout all of these conversations we've had, all of the episodes, what we've learned and what we're still figuring out. Because if there's one thing I've learned, that's no matter what age, we keep learning.
And thank God, because as someone who just had a birthday and is headed into their 40s next year, I don't want to stop, which is why we need these conversations intergenerationally.
Exactly. So, first of all, happy birthday. 39 is just the start.
New beginning.
Just keeps getting better. We're going to talk about what surprised us most this season. And I'll start off because what surprised me the most is how often completely different women ended up talking about similar things, be it identity, person, visibility, loss, starting over. No matter their age or background, so many women were wrestling with the same questions. Molly, what surprised you most about this season?
I think you just said a piece of what I was going to say, and that's the identity piece. I think that no matter what women we've talked to throughout this last season that we have been doing from women, and when we say all walks of life, I know it sounds so cliche, but I couldn't be more proud of just the diversity of life experiences and expertise and points of view that we've gotten from women. And the big thing that stands out to me is that identity piece. It doesn't matter if you are a woman in business teaching other women how to gain their financial freedom and find their autonomy, either post divorce or raising children or deciding to not have kids and taking a different path than maybe their mothers and their grandmothers did. Or if you're someone like Erin Kerman, who is fighting for reproductive rights and had her entire worldview not challenged, but kind of brought to light when digging in the stories of these women trying to seek abortive care. I'm sorry, Sylvia, you're gonna have to edit this, right? Right.
No,
Just
we're all good.
women seeking care for being pregnant, whether or not they wanted to keep the pregnancies, from politicians to activists for the environment, for the period justice. Everything comes back to, for me, autonomy and identity. And that has really been speaking to me at this part of my life as I move into this next phase.
Well, was there a guest that stayed with you longer than you expected?
Yeah, I think Erin stayed with me for a long time. The stories that she reported on, with her book following different journeys of pregnant women as she was pregnant with her own, and just seeing the abysmal rate of healthcare for women and in this country, and how much we say that we care about families and children and women. But that's not what the statistics show. That's not what they show. And those stories I will never forget. And it has made me even more adamant about, personally, about reproductive autonomy being the baseline for human rights for women. And I think that's where a lot of our dignity come from. I think that lends ourselves to the perimenopause and the menopausal conversation, right? Because if we're not caring about women's issues from all the way down to helping them become leaders. Who was it we spoke to about the Etre girls, right? Can you
And,
remind me of
and
her name?
Ms. President?
And Ms. President, right? We're trying to build female leaders and empower these young girls. How can we do that if we're giving them a future where they don't know if they can have their own bodily autonomy and make their own money and have their own individualism? It's all connected, right? Like, we
It's
start from
it's
mentoring these young girls, we're building them up, and you get to a point at a certain point in womanhood, and you take a look at the generations after you, and I'm like, I I can do this. I can't wait to step into my power. I can't wait to navigate perimenopause and menopause and learn from the women who came before me. And I think it's just this big connective thread that we forget sometimes because we're so busy trying to navigate these structures that try to hold us back.
well, a couple of ones that have stayed with me. I mean, Anna Rollins and talking about good girls and purity and disordered eating and everything that went into being a good girl and how it took her to realize what life she was living and being able to turn that around. To me, that was one of it really resonated because a lot of it I had no idea what was really going on in some of these young girls' lives and what they were being taught was really not reality.
No, and I think it's a lot of the women we've spoken to, generational curse breaking, right? I think Anna touches on that in hers too, coming from that culture of faith, is how do you break these cycles in raising her own children now, right? I wanted to touch on too, Paula Stone Williams, one of my favorite people we spoke to. Just this bright light of like an empathy expert, I think I would call her. The conversation, I think I could listen to a TED Talk 10 times over. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk to trans women and hear their experiences of womanhood and their own experiences of patriarchy and sexism. And I think Paula is just a wealth of empathy and a wealth of knowledge, and I can't be more grateful for that conversation.
Well, speaking of Paula, one of the things that has always stuck with me is the fact that she didn't transition until she was in her 60s.
Yep.
So she realized she was able to, she actually, and there's so few, she lived both sides and realized she used to be that guy with the white shirt and the suit and how she was being treated as a woman, as Paula, and basically this powerful, successful woman of when she was, before she trans, was now invisible. And she, her journey through that. One of the others, Linda Villarosa,
Yeah.
talking about how no matter how wealthy, how educated, where you live, Black women still do not get the same health care that everyone else gets. And then we talked to Susan Hardwick Smith, who went through training, doctors, an OBGYN, and the amount of education that was taught about women and menopause was nil, nothing, nada. They went from, puberty to being pregnant, and then there wasn't more that was taught. And how that has changed. To me, there have been so many, the core is telling these stories and realizing that no matter where you are, no matter what you've been through, these stories need to be told, because even if it's one kernel of information, that's a lot of information. Jen Donahue, one of the first female military captains in a time when there were none. And the fight she had, but also the realization after a couple of decades where she was asked to speak to a younger generation, her initial thought was, what are they going to? They're just not going to listen. And her surprise and wonder about how they wanted to hear from her, what they wanted to learn, because they were going through some of the same things that she had, and she didn't realize it. And the joy in being able to transfer that knowledge and learn from them and see, it to me, the cross generational is so important. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, because this podcast is about conversations between generations. So, Molly, what have you learned from having a co host who is more than 30 years older than you?
Well, first of all, I consider it a great privilege that women and the generations older than me want to hang out with me. I have a few, I have my own circle here in my community, and it's very, very special and very precious to me, especially as someone whose mother passed away a decade ago. I have cherished so much having the perspective of someone who, even though we've had very different lives, bringing a sense of calmness and kind of like I know you're in the thick of it. I know everything's really terrible, but but our generation has also been through some terrible things. And look at the foundation that you've laid for us. Look at the foundation that boomers and Gen X have laid for us. And the more we can find that common thread together of what it is, who do women as a collective, what kind of space do we want to occupy? We want it to be my generation, we've in the generation under me, we've built on those waves of feminism. We want it to be expansive. We want it to be run the gamut of the queer community and be gender expansive and affirm these different explorations of understanding our identities and what it means to be a woman and what it means to connect with your divine feminine or your inner feminine. And I just think it's so exciting to be in a time to have access to all the information on the internet, on podcasts. We always talk about so trite about just continuing this conversation, but I just can't tell you how many conversations I have every week in my day job and with women in my community. And when I come back here, in front of my computer, in front of my plant with Sylvia. And I know that you and I are about to connect. Maybe you'll tell a story about your grandkids. I'll tell a story about what's happening in the weeds of entering midlife. And you remember, and I look at you and think, God, okay, I've got it. I can figure it out. Like, this is what these conversations come with, is me talking to women from different generations or having perspectives from the different generations in these conversations and just remembering who we are, remembering why we're here, remembering our focus is on our progress and our relationships with other women and our relationships with ourselves. And so, it's just been so special to me, and I'm eternally grateful.
Well, we talk about the differences, but we also talk about the similarities. The similarities in careers, children, relationships, expectations, and somehow we're still trying to figure it out. One of the things that wanted to ask you because I went through, uh, single motherhood, career, relationship, what I expected, yada, yada, yada. But one of the things that my generation did not grow up with in that and is all the noise around us, all the listen, I started out with the internet before Google was even anything, and it was great. And it was used for, certain purposes, but we are flooded with so much noise that we have to figure out what is noise and what is real. To me, that kind of makes it even more difficult for somebody of your generation who is juggling career and family and children. Do you see that as a challenge? How do you look at that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that honestly, talking to the women that we've spoken to, doing the research, reading more things, talking to you, really just staying in the mix of being connected with women um in other walks of life. You think as a writer, I think, and think of better phrases. In other walks of life is really what it is. It's a perspective shift for me. I don't know. I'm an adult woman. If I start to feel like crap when I'm on my Instagram algorithm too much, it's up to me to change it, right? I think that there is a lot of noise, but what I have gained from it purposefully and intuitively learning to listen to my tuition has just been to cut out the noise. The more that I have conversations, the more that I'm talking to women about their real experiences and their real lived lives and getting off the algorithm, which is a challenge for my generation, so much more for maybe for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, it's way more. But as someone who was a kid when the AOL CDs came out and I grew up in the chat rooms and I'm a millennial, like our parents weren't paying attention to anything. I think that as I get older and I make sure to stay in connection with other women, and that's a big part of it, is staying in connection in real life with other women. You can easily cut out the noise. You can cut out the noise if you were having enough conversations and living in your life, occupying your real life. Because I can tell you right now, as someone who's raising a teenage girl in this moment, who doesn't have a phone, who does not have an iPhone, who does not have social media, as far as I know, she better not, as far as I know. It's it affects me. I start to feel like crap when I'm on it too much. Your algorithm gets fed with the same crap that your generation was fed in different ways. We talked about this before. It may not be right in your face and is obvious, but it's always percolating in the background. And I think just the more that I stay connected to the women in my life, the more conversations I have like this with women who have gone through this from a different iteration, right? Not online. It's so much easier to cut out the noise when you're connected.
Well, the whole thing is, like I said, with my generation, my children always had the first computer. What? Because that's the world I was in. That
Yeah.
was part of my career. So they always had something. There was always a computer. They started off with AOL, and to me, what bothers me a lot is when people don't realize that having these conversations is so important because what we could gather what the knowledge we could get, even as I said, just a kernel. That's all it takes is one little bit for somebody to go, oh, wow, look, I'm not alone. And to be able to just put all that together and say, gee, and be open to learning from every generation and continue that. Uh, you know, I know that there are some milestones that we continue to have. And we've talked about them this season. We've talked about books and careers and reinventions and achievements, but we've never really talked about our own milestones. I know for me right now, and yes, I still have milestones. I'm in the process of selling my townhouse. I found a fantastic little schoolhouse that was built in 1775. And even though people say she's never going to move into something like that, yeah, because guess what? Why not? It's fun. Feels like at any age, people say you're supposed to be slowing down. To me, I still have a lot. I'm still becoming. I'm still editing my life, and I continue to do that. And I hope that that doesn't stop. So, what has changed in your life this year? You can just give the
What?
what has it?
I laugh because Sylvia knows that I moved 3 times last year. Um, what has changed? Oh my God. This 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 opportunity to do this podcast with you came to me, kismet, serendipity, fate, whatever you wanna call it. Have been in the grandest upheaval of my life over the past 2 years, and I finally am back in my little community, and I have a lovely house that I'm renting from a lovely family and beautiful neighbors and walkability to all the things my kids need. And I'm figuring out my finances and I'm figuring out who I'm becoming and how I want to spend my time and what I want to do. And each time that you and I get on this microphone together and this camera, even though sometimes I'm late, I I get
Sometimes I've forgotten to hit the record button.
yeah. I'm just I again, it's helps centers me and grounds me. And so this podcast and you and the women we've spoken to have become sort of this through line in this journey of this next chapter of my life where I am learning, as we've spoken about before, to decenter men from my life in a way that means I am learning to no longer consider what I wear, what I do, what I say. Not that I really ever did before, but more so than ever is what do I want at the end of the day, right? When I am in your generation, I look at your life. I look at the lives of my other friends in their 70s and I think, God, the women, they don't care. I mean, they don't care what anyone thinks of them, like truly at all. I say I don't, but I'm still have that mask of performing, mask of performing under patriarchy. And I think the greatest thing I've gained in this journey in my life is just learning to be attuned to myself and be with myself. And the way that I find the most authentic version of me is in conversation with women about their own experiences and their lives and their dreams and their hopes and their ambitions. I was talking to another friend of mine. We go on a walk and get tea maybe every couple of months. She's in her 70s. And she's like, I've had a beautiful life. I don't know what I'm doing now, but like, I want to move. I want to walk around. I want to do stuff. I want to spend time with you. I want to spend time with my younger friends. And I don't think there's ever been a time in my life, given the difficulties and the challenges and everything I've overcome and gone through over this past last couple of years, honestly, I'm still excited about the future. So I think that that's pretty big. I'm still excited about the future, even though it's all hell sometimes.
Listen, I'm excited about the future as well because why not? And that's what people don't understand. They put a number to something and hopefully what we're doing is breaking down those assumptions, because assumptions was an old odd couple where Felix says, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And it's true. Assumptions are just it's so preconceived notions. It's so bad, but it takes time and it takes practice to get that out of your head.
Oh, I would love to yeah, assumptions, there it is, right? Um, the assumption that when I spend time with, women in older generations that I am or younger women, I always feel a little self-conscious, you know? Like, I want you to think I'm smart. I want you to
Well, you
think
are
that I
smart.
no, but that's what I mean, like,
You're
I don't
creative.
care.
I mean, that's why I asked you to join me,
I just I want women
because
like, I don't really care, I'm not trying to impress anyone other than, like, myself, but women that I admire, it's like I desperately crave to, like, stand in the presence and just kind of absorb the wisdom, you know? And that's how I sometimes think this podcast is I put on my little camera and I'm listening and sometimes forget that I have to have a conversation and I'm just in awe, just absorbing the experiences. So yeah, the assumptions, I don't know why. I think it's one of those things that my journey over the past couple of years is learning to believe what people say the first time, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And so when a woman tells me they want to hear my opinion, they want to talk to me, I can't tell you how much self-confidence even now at almost 40 it gives me. So again, it's that connective piece. It's the getting over the self-consciousness of fully embodying who you are. And for me, I think that's the next part of my journey is letting go of these assumptions and fully embracing this experience of being a woman in this world that's
well,
fostered through these conversations.
I can tell you that, just because you get older, what I've learned is if I make a preconceived assumption or idea, to immediately take a look at it and see why I'm doing it. And it always turns around.
Yeah.
I mean, always turns around. But but the good thing is that we now have the tools going through the noise to find out what is reality and what isn't. And sometimes we have to dig through layers, but we can if we're open to it, and that's the thing, we need to be open, and I think that more than anything else, that openness, I never would have been able to do, what Pretty Woman, the stop fidgeting, I'm sorry, but I do that all the
Oh,
time.
me neither.
And that's it. That's another thing that I've learned. I don't listen to people who tell me that things need to be perfect because they're never going to be perfect.
No. I
Um,
don't think this painting is straight. I don't
well, there's
care.
a thing behind my head that's been
Don't
there
care.
forever, and forget it. It's going to be there forever, and such is life. And if somebody says to me, "Well, the professionals don't," it's me and you having a conversation, and that's the thing. We have conversations. We don't interview. And that's something else I was told was wrong. A pod you're supposed to interview. And there are certain things when people tell me don't, what I've learned, the most important thing that I've learned, and I'm still learning it, is somebody shouldn't tell me don't, because that's really what gets me going.
Also, that and don't shush me. Don't shush me. I'll talk more.
You know, one of the things that I've noticed is that every woman that we've spoken to in her own way is they've been editing. They've been editing expectations, editing old stories, editing assumptions about what life is supposed to look like, not becoming someone new, becoming more themselves. So, what have you edited in your life?
Interesting. Editing, I guess what do you mean by editing things out of my life? Are we talking about just the way
Change.
that I move through the world?
Okay.
Kind of, let me think. Editing. Editing is a really interesting verb to use for this. I like it. It's kind of tickling my brain a little bit. I think the last year of my life, I have been reformulating my own understanding of what I even want my life to look like. I have been reevaluating, do I want a partner? Do I need a partner? Why do I want a romantic partner in my life? Actually, I really love living alone. It's the best thing I've ever done. You know, my house is set up in a way that is comfortable for my children. They have everything they need here. They have their own space. But in the meantime, I'm not hanging things in a way that matches. My plants are half dead. I've got my, like, my vintage couch and my color, and I wanna walk into my home and feel peace. I think what I've edited about my life is removing things that don't feel right, and I think of really learning to listen to and trust my intuition. And a big part of that has to do, again, with staying connected in conversation to other women in my real life, um, and here in these conversations in this space with you. I'm not so much editing, I guess. It feels like a stripping away of things that don't serve me. And all of my older friends said this was going to happen someday. And you're just so stuck in the thick of going, even if you don't have kids. For me, it's raising the 3 children, it's figuring out my career, it's figuring out how to manage life on my own, right? But it's also taking away these layers of things that don't serve me anymore. And I don't think I could understand that scary part of the in between where you take it away before you found the next foundation and the next stability and the clarity of what you're supposed to be doing and what you're supposed to embody. I don't think I would have felt comfortable enough in that in between space without having this connection through here with you, with conversations with women, and just in community. I just keep saying that. That is my whole mantra now. I'm sure people are sick of me talking about it, but it's just, God, you're a woman. If you feel like shit and you feel scared and alone and confused and like you don't know where you belong in this world and where you don't fit in and you don't want to date, you don't want to be married, and it's the identity crisis, right? That this culture forces upon us. Literally, go into the woods with other women. Go sit in a circle, invite friends over, talk to a woman you don't know. I have a good friend on Instagram now that I talk to once a week who I met while I was on a date with some guy I haven't seen in a year. Like, it's find find women and talk to
Well,
them.
it's funny because you're talking about enjoying your space,
Yeah.
enjoying being present. I've come to learn, love having my own space. Does that mean I don't want somebody else in at some point in my life? Um, no, that's not what it means. It
Yeah.
means that I am comfortable here. I mean, one of the first things I did when I broke up after a 6, 7 year relationship, where it was nothing of me there, I put a 2 by 3 foot picture of me over my bed.
You're not gonna get this reference because of my generation, but that's a real Sheena Shea thing to do, and I hope if someone
I,
listens to this,
I,
they
I
understand.
do get
You
that.
do you?
Yes, I do. Look,
Interrupt.
the one thing I didn't get was when my grandson had his first birthday and he was in a t-shirt and it had B period, I period, G period, and then a crown. And I thought it was for the big one because he was one. I didn't realize the theme was Biggie, the rapper. Now, mind you, I had heard of him, but I didn't know this for 2 weeks when my sister said to me, is that supposed to mean something? And then I asked, I went, oh,
Oh.
but that doesn't mean I'm not up on it.
Well, I
Really?
my brain's just rotted from a lot of reality TV vision. No, TV. It's no, reality TV is anthropology. So, that's it's not a guilty pleasure. That's another thing too. This whole thing that, like, men are allowed to have, like, silly hobbies, like, they can do their fantasy football, like, not that women don't do it. I have friends, obviously, but this cliche that this is men's hobbies and that reality TV is a silly I treat reality TV like fantasy football. So, my
Okay.
thing is, like, you're probably not a Bravo fan, but for those who know Sheena Shea, who when she got married, put different, right? She did it for marriage, but she also had these portraits of herself blown up on canvas all over her home, and I'm like, "You know what? Yes, you should. You should. Why not? It's your home. It's you get just one life. Celebrate yourself, love yourself." And I'm sure it was a fabulous photo of you.
Well, one of the most important lessons this year didn't come from one of our guests. It came from my grandson, Bryson, and he's 4. Okay, he's 4 and a half. That makes a difference at the
It
age of
does, yeah.
4. One day he said something so simple. He said, "I'm still learning." And I remember thinking, aren't we all? At 4, at 74, at 39, we're still learning, we're still growing, we're still becoming. And to me, maybe that's the point. Maybe the day we stop learning is the day we stop growing. And I think we've just talked about what we're still learning. To me, one of the most important things is curiosity, being curious, questioning. I mean, could you imagine if we took out curiosity from life?
No, I my brain doesn't stop being curious ever, and I think that is why, having conversations with people itches my brain so much because for me, the curiosity is nosy. I wanna know everything. I want all the information. I don't care if it's low stakes. I will deep dive anything. You tell me one thing, I'm going to go deep dive on Reddit. I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. I'm gonna watch YouTube. And then I might get distracted and forget. But if you bring up the subject again, I'm going to keep asking questions. And that's what I love about conversations with you, with people, because it is. It's not it's a question, the curiosity, but then it follows a thread all the way down. And it's wanting to know why we tick the way we do, why our brains work the way we do. And I'm so love hearing because I almost have a 5-year-old. My daughter's about to be 5, my third born. And God, sometimes don't you wish we still had those brains a little bit? The brains that see everything novel around us. Is that what you've kind of been getting from spending time with your grandson?
Oh,
Just the way
man.
they see everything through their eyes? Everything's so new, everything's so incredible and, like, fascinating.
It's absolutely wonderful. There's a quote, and I didn't look it up, so I can't really quote it, but it's kind of like, um, oh, but what if I fail? And then the next line is something like, oh, but what if you fly? What if you find out that you can fly? If you don't try, if you're not questioning, and if you think you know everything, well, that's really too bad. That to me is very sad.
Also, I can't relate. I feel like I know nothing.
And we've asked questions. Why do women need spaces where they can talk honestly? And for me, it's quite simple. When women talk honestly, something shifts. We stop feeling alone and we stop thinking we're the only ones asking the question, which is something I learned a long time ago. We realize that somebody else has been there too. And that is so powerful. So,
Yeah. Yeah, with the women talking honestly and openly part, I just think it is so important for us to have spaces where we're not falling into these same traps that, I mean, it's probably, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably easier. I always assume it's easier for the older generations not to fall into this because the older you get, my assumption is the less entangled you are with the cultural messaging from patriarchy. But conversations where we're not, where I personally am still untangling this in my life, where I'm not having to the self-editing. I'm not having to self-edit because there are men in the room who aren't going to relate or get it. I'm just able to be completely, authentically off the cuff, off the wall, unhinged kind of woman who wants to have honest, brutal conversations that when men are around, it's just it changes the dynamic. And I love the men in my life who are wonderful to me. I'm raising a son. You have sons, you have a grandson, but I
I have
just think
2
they're so
grandsons, don't forget the other one.
two grandsons. I just think it very important. Very it's important to have the sacred space here for these conversations.
Well, Molly, this conversation has been one that we could have done it earlier, but I think this is the right time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you do something's the right time, you know?
We are wrapping up season 2. We want to thank every guest who's trusted us with their stories. And I thank everyone so much for joining us. You know, the conversations to me have reminded us that no matter what age, we're all still becoming, we're all still learning, we're all still editing our lives. Molly, this has been great. We are going to be taking a short pause before returning with new conversations and new voices. We're not going away. No, no, no. You can't get rid of us that easily.
Yeah, good luck.
We're simply taking a little time before the next conversation begins. Until then, stay curious, keep asking questions, keep listening, and remember, you're never too old or too young to keep learning. We'll see you soon. And as always, one of the good things about podcasting is we don't go away. You could find us wherever you listen to podcasts, on YouTube. And if you've missed any, go right ahead. But Molly, thank you so much. This has been a conversation that has been needed to be had because why not?
Thank you to all of our guests. Thank you, Sylvia. And I look forward to continuing the conversation very soon.
Until then.
This has been a Life of Prey production.